We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Of course, coming at you with the big one, the player that had to be in this class of 2025 for the Florida Gators, and he is Vernell Brown III, following his dad, following his grandfather, committing to the University of Florida, becoming a Gator over the in-state rivals, over Ohio State, commits to the Gators in a beautiful, beautiful ceremony right there. Absolutely had to have him and did get him. Vernell Brown III is a Gator. No matter what forget about the rest of the class for now. Celebrate today. This was the one that had to be in the class, one we identified before we even turned the page from 24 class to the 25 class. Vernell Brown III was near the top of the board right now, at the top of the board for the Gators. Had to get him. Absolutely, absolutely great news that he is Gator. Could not lose this one. Could not have him go anywhere else. So we'll get into it. What type of player is he? We'll go back to the interview I had with him earlier this week, too, about why Florida, how he'll be used, all that good stuff. So hit that like button. I know you like the content. I know you like what just happened. Vernell Brown III becoming a Florida Gator. So smash that like button. Subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? Subscribe right here on YouTube. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Plenty of ways to do so. Plenty of ways to listen to Gators Breakdown. We got you covered with everything Florida Gators football. One more. Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. You want to keep the conversation going? Hop in their Discord. Hop in that recruiting channel. Celebrate this big recruiting win for the Gators. Have some other conversations. There's really a plus to Gators Breakdown Plus. All kind of conversations going on there. Talk about the new EA Sports, college football video game, regular football, other Gator sports, all that good stuff right there. Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. All right, well, without further ado, let's get to it. Let's get to it, Gator Nation. We got to commit, and this one is the big one. Vernell Brown III, playing at Jones in Orlando, 5'11", 170 pounds, 5-star on the 24/7 Sports Composite, coming in as the 25th overall player in the country and the 6th ranked wide receiver. He's the 5th player in the state of Florida. Brown's one spot away from being a 5-star as well in the on-3 industry rankings. He comes in at 33rd there. It's the top 32 players that get that 5-star on 3. One spot away from that. He's 33rd, but he's also the 6th ranked wide receiver on the on-3 industry rankings, as well as the 5th ranked player in the state of Florida. If he signs with the Gators, ends up being a Gator in the end when it's all said and done, he'd be in the top 10 of wide receivers the Gators would have signed since 2000. That's how big this one is for many reasons. If you're Florida, you want to keep the legacy going. No matter how important it was or not to him, or in leading up to this as a recruiting pitch, from the Florida angle, you needed that to pay off. You needed that to happen. And you're getting a really good player. You're getting an offensive weapon. This is a big win. As you also, another angle to this, you beat Florida State for him. You beat Miami for him. You beat Ohio State for him. You come out on top in a Big 3 battle and one of the best wide receiver producing teams in the country in recent memory. That's Ohio State. You overcome all that. Vernell Brown III picks the orange and blue. So it certainly would have stung if you didn't get him because of the legacy angle. But this had to be a great recruiting job just in general. Forget about the legacy angle for a second, though. I know that I just brought it up, and from the Florida side, you had to get it because of that. But let's forget about it just for a second. And this had to be a good recruiting job, regardless of that, by Billy Napier and Billy Gonzalez. And the rest of the staff, Chad Lucas, David Decker, the wide receiver staffers there, all played a part here. And I'm sure the legacy angle helped in some way, but we've heard Vernell Brown to say, I didn't want Florida to push that. It wasn't going to be the deciding factor. Not the determining factor. I'm sure it helped Florida in some way, but I do believe him when he says it wasn't going to be the determining factor. This really was a recruit Florida could not lose in this class. The overall class isn't where we need it to be. We'll see in the end where it ends up, but this class has to include Vernell Brown III either way. So why the Gators? Brown shared earlier this week on Gators Breakdown of why Florida could be the pick.
I mean, I think when you just look at all the factors beyond that legacy point, just on the field and off the field, ultimately I would feel like Florida is the school that put me in the best position to maximize not only as a football player, but as a man and in life. I think the legacy approach is just icing on top of the cake, being from Gainesville, a lot of my family members going to the University of Florida and being able to continue that legacy while creating my own path is, I think it'll be the best in all factors.
And you mentioned the reasons outside of football. What are some of those reasons? We know when in interviews with you, on here, as we're talking here and other interviews throughout other media services, we hear about what can Florida do for you for the football reasons. But what are reasons outside of football? I know we hear about Gator Made, we hear about Florida Victorious, and the NIL side of things. But as a person, what do you hope Florida does for you as well?
I mean, just the environment. If I'm not mistaken, I know they're top 3 in public universities, and extremely. Not only are they a historically good program, but they're also a really good school. So just the people you'll be around on a daily in classes and stuff like that, and then that network at Florida, being able to meet different people. Not saying that it's not at other schools, but that network at Florida. And just being able to, kind of put myself in position for life after football.
So why was this the player the Gators just needed to have? Well, we're gonna show it. If you're watching the YouTube version, if you haven't watched Vernell Brown III's highlights yet, first finish this episode of Gators Breakdown. We will see some of the highlights here, but then go back and rewatch them, and you'll absolutely see it. He is a threat every time he touches the ball. Let's get to some highlights. I mean, absolute weapon that you see here when the ball's in his hands. Two-way player for Orlando Jones, and certainly a threat no matter where he's at on the field. He also double teams as the primary return man for Orlando Jones. Caught 70 passes for 1,363 yards and 10 touchdowns on offense while scoring 4 times on special teams. That's 3 punt returns and a kickoff return. Andrew Ivins of 24/7 Sports offers this analysis. Dynamic athlete with elite short area quickness and explosive movement patterns. Has impacted the game in all 3 phases at the prep level and impressed at times as a defensive back. But ceiling appears to be highest as a slot receiver that can generate chunk plays with his run after catch capabilities. Eats on in-breaking routes as he creates separation by sinking his hips and then quickly driving towards soft spots in coverage. Likely never going to have a high success rate as a true contested catch situations given his size, but plucks the football with confidence and doesn't shy away from contact. Projects as a potential game breaker on Saturdays based on what he's put on tape as a junior and the type of offensive weapon that play callers can get creative with. Screens, jet sweeps. Given how he can make defenders miss both in tight quarters and the open field. Will add plenty of value as a return man as well. And if you see these highlights, the thing that jumps out to me early on is just how he is used. You see a screen pass go the distance. You see great route running, him beating a defender just over the top. You see a slant caught for a touchdown in a goal line situation, just beating, shuffles the feet at the very beginning of the route, gets open for a touchdown. Back in early June at the OT7 championship, Cody Belair of On3 shared Vernell Brown III is a magician with the ball in his hands. His elusiveness and agility manifest in the ability to disappear from would-be tacklers. He is nearly impossible to tackle even in one-hand touch setting. During day one of the OT7 championship, Brown was torching defenses in the underneath and intermediate levels of the field with his dynamic route running and suddenness. He was one of the tougher covers throughout the first day of the OT7 championship, and we expect him to continue his run of strong play going into Saturday. That was back in early June. So he was a big riser in the rankings this past spring, with On3 saying the reason for the rise was Brown has backed up magnificent. Wow, cannot say that word. Magnificent. Wow, I'm struggling with magnificent. There we go. Magnificent junior film with a dominant offseason to date. He's a 3-level threat at Orlando Jones, showing signs of very well-rounded skill set. Brown is arguably the best yak receiver in the cycle. He is extremely dangerous with the ball in his hands, flashing high-end spatial awareness, burst, and lateral agility. Brown is a loose and fluid athlete who projects as a very good route runner. He's able to separate at all levels, including as a deep threat. So he's pretty much a do-it-all receiver. That is what you're getting here with Vernell Brown III. You see why he is rising in the rankings, one of the best receivers in the country, why he's a 5-star, high 4-star, no matter what service you got. Vernell Brown III is up there. He may not be the fastest or the tallest, but it is clear he is a playmaker. You can just see it for yourself. If you're listening to the podcast version, pull over on the side of the road, pull up the highlights. When you get home, pull up the highlights. You will love what you see from Vernell Brown III. Great route runner, great hands. That sets him up to be that catch and run weapon. Certainly can see him duplicating what Florida was able to do with Trey Wilson, in his freshman season. If Vernell Brown is going to make an impact, it's going to be very similar to, I think, what we saw with Trey Wilson. So let's go back to Vernell and hear him explain, how he'll be used, hear his game, how Florida plans on, maybe using him in comparison to Trey Wilson. Had a lot of good stuff to say. Vernell, break down your game a bit. I know we've watched highlights. We've watched camp all throughout spring and summer. What do you do well? Where do you want to get better?
I mean, to sum up my game in 2 words, I would say electric and game changer. I'm a player who has a monumental field presence. You can never forget about me. But most people try to eliminate me from games. But I'm explosive. I think there's not anyone like me in my class with the ball in their hands. Really good route runner, can separate, explosive. And above all, a smart football player. I know the game. I understand offense and defense. So that understanding kind of makes it a little bit easier to get open, knowing where people are coming from when you catch the ball. That way you're able to make moves and different things like that. So I would say my knowledge of the game is kind of what puts me on a different level than everyone else, aside from everything physical.
And what are you working on right now? What are the things that you want to get better at ahead of your senior season, and things you want to be able to take that next step in the college?
I mean, just cleaning everything up. I want to become a technician at the receiver position. So studying the greats, training and working on getting in and out of my breaks, eliminating false steps, the little stuff.
We got to go and look at what Florida was able to do with Trey Wilson last year as a true freshman, and how he was used. Billy Napier, Billy Gonzalez, did they explain to you how you would be used, and could you share that with us? I mean, I know Trey, what he was able to do last year, and just right away. I mean, game one, he made his presence felt. Mm-hmm. Is that something that caught your eye as well, and what Billy Napier and Billy Gonzalez was able to explain to you, and how you'll be using the offense?
I mean, absolutely. Just seeing Trey Wilson, what they did with him as a freshman, him getting those reps and getting involved in the offense without them putting too much pressure on him. Not saying he can't handle it. They just didn't this year. But, I think definitely it helps. And then as far as how they will use me, kind of in that similar light, I think I would be able to play. They said I would be able to play a little more outside as well. So that's kind of their plan for me.
Would you be up for taking some handoffs, some sweeps, and
Oh, absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about being in position to make plays and showcase. So whatever that is, I'm there.
All right, Gator Nation, dream a bit. An offense, DJ Lagway, Trey Wilson, Vernell Brown III. The potential for big plays. I mean, those three together could see it as soon as next season. Man, that's dangerous. You know, Brown has been quoted as saying the combo would, quote, be unstoppable. I mean, you can see the vision of so many weapons on the field that Billy Napier and this offensive staff trying to build together, making it hard for any defense to match up. I mean, given what we saw from Trey Wilson as a freshman and the steps that he would be in his third year, teaming up with a freshman like Vernell Brown III, if he can duplicate anything Trey was able to do, maybe even elevate it. I'm not trying to put that pressure on him, but this is the type of player, you know, to me, this is an instant impact you get on the field as a freshman type of player. And you duplicate a lot of what we saw Trey Wilson. That's what you can get from a player rated like this. And look, just what we see with our eyes on the highlights. This is a guy who should be able to crack his way into the rotation and be on the field right away. Now, the thing is, he won't necessarily have to be. I mean, I think you can get creative with him and Trey Wilson on the field at the same time. Let's not forget about Tank and you know, and his speed that he brings to the field as well. I mean, Florida's elevated the speed at the wide receiver position the last few cycles. You know, so Vernell Brown III, he's not going to be in the situation much like Trey Wilson was, where he's going to have to be forced to be on the field because you need that type of receiver. You need that type of guy that you just hadn't had on the roster. Well, you've got some guys on the roster like that now. So, and you know, I'll beat this horse to death in recruiting. But if you have a guy like this and you have guys like that in front of him, if you see Vernell Brown III on the field, which I think you will, you know, they have a lot of belief in him. And he went out there and proved that, hey, I deserve reps over this guy or that guy as a true freshman. So if you see him out there, which I surely believe you will, Florida's gonna, you know, there needs to be some creative ways to use all these guys together, all that speed. Now, of course, you don't want all your smaller type of receivers all on the field at the same time, but you can get creative to have a few packages in that realm. A lot of speed on that field for Florida when you have Vernell Brown III to the mix. Hopefully down the road, he signs with Florida. He's part of this class, gets ingrained, and he's on the field. So Brown is the 10th commitment for the class of 2025 and the top player in the class overall. He and Jalen Wiggins, the defensive lineman edge prospect, are the only two in the top 100 overall. Now, Brown does join four-star Joshua Moore as the second wide receiver in the class. And just talked about types of receivers. Well, this gives Florida two different types at the position. Moore, that big body type, the 6'4", big-bodied, I'm going to body you out, I'm going to out-physical you type of receiver. And Brown's the smaller, outrun the defender type. Great 1-2 combo here for this class. Now, the third wide receiver in this class looks to be trending towards Nashawn Montgomery, 6'1" product out of Miami Central. Penn State's the main competition for a decision, likely coming in August. However, you know, you hope Florida gets him on campus for the Grill in the Ville at the end of the month and hopefully secure the third wide receiver then. The plan is get him on campus for that event. At that time, you hope he doesn't leave without a commitment. You know, he delayed his decision to August. Is it because he's waiting to see what maybe Penn State does, or maybe just need more time to make the decision? I know Florida's still the school trending right now, no matter with the delay. But you'd love if he's going to be on campus at the end of the month. You'd like to go ahead and shut that one down. So to wrap it all up right here, Florida does move into the top 60 in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings with the addition of Vernell Brown III. Certainly not where we want to see it overall. We'll see what the rest of the summer holds before visits start happening again in the fall. But, you know, there'll be some movement in the next few weeks as we lead up to the season. I don't think Florida's done before the season kicks off. But this was the big one. This was the one that had to happen. Cannot overstate beating your in-state rivals, beating Ohio State, for Vernell Brown III. And just going back to the legacy angle, it would have stung to see him go somewhere else, the type of player he is. You want the legacy to come when the player this good. I mean, you want the legacy or not, you want a player this good. Florida went and got him and beat some big boys for him. All right, there you go. Hit that like button one more time before we sign off here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.